Hey there, Youngman Brown here. Just want to let you know that today's episode is part 1 of my inspiring and amazing interview with Yuko Shimizu, who I couldn't even believe agreed to come on the show, let alone talk to me for so long. She was very generous with her time and with her knowledge and her advice. So we split it into 2 great pushes for you. So hopefully you enjoy it, and without further ado, here's my interview with Yuko Shimizu. Your Creative Push, episode 13.
There are many things we want to do or we fantasize about life. Most of the things we say it, but we don't do.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Yuko Shimizu. Yuko is a Japanese illustrator based in New York City, an instructor at the School of Visual Arts. Newsweek Japan has chosen Yuko as one of 100 Japanese people the world respects in 2009. You may have seen her work on the Gap t-shirts, Pepsi cans, Visa billboards, Microsoft and Target ads, as well as on the book covers of Penguin, Scholastic, DC Comics, and on the pages of New York Times, Time, Rolling Stone, New Yorker, and in many other publications over the last 10 years. But Yuko, illustration was not your first job, and I love this aspect of your story because I think it will really resonate with everyone listening. You had what you call a midlife crisis at the age of 22, and if it's not too difficult, would you mind going back there and telling us that story?
Yes. So, I was drawing ever since I was a kid. And so that was always my hobby and that was always my passion. But, it's like typically parents want you to pursue a career that is more practical because they think, artists, they will like never make money and, we don't want you to suffer. So, I ended up studying advertising and marketing in college. And advertising not meaning the advertising, the art school advertising, the business school advertising. And then got a job doing corporate PR in a big corporation in Tokyo. And the reason behind why I picked advertising and marketing was because I always thought I liked creative things. But to be in practical field, I wanted a happy medium. And I felt like advertising is the most creative in the practical field. And after studying that, getting a job in corporate was like a natural path for me. But soon after I started working in corporate, I realized it wasn't for me. It was really not working out. I actually liked the job. It was interesting. I guess that's why I ended up staying for 11 years. I actually stayed there for 11 years in one company doing a job in corporate PR for from the day I graduated college till I quit. But I don't know, like the corporate culture was so not for me, and I struggled a lot. In the beginning, I had really good bosses and good coworkers, and by the end, I had really mentally abusive boss, and that really was a trigger for me to quit and go back to art school after 11 years of working corporate. So that's what I did.
And how did you have like the courage to kind of do that, to decide, all right, this is enough of this and I'm going to go to school?
I think everyone who make these jumps have different turning point. Why? In my case, because I hit the rock bottom. It was just terrible and I was crying in the bathroom because my boss was like so mentally abusive. And from that experience, when things are working well, working corporate, I have steady income, secure job, good benefit. Like it's really hard for me to make a jump to be a freelance illustrator. So that doesn't really happen. But when things are really bad, I feel like sometimes that triggers you to make decisions because, you don't want to stay in the lowest point. And I felt like it was one of the lowest point in my life right before I quit. And at that point, like, why do I need to go through this for steady paycheck and good benefit? I put them on scales and it so wasn't worth it. So that's how I ended up making the switch.
Now, was there a long period of time where then the money thing became a problem, or did that kind of work itself out? Because I think that's for many people listening, that's the number one thing. That's the thing for me, like, that holds me back is it's just so scary to the prospect of just kind of letting that stability go of money and being so locked into the money.
Right. So what worked out for me was I had a pretty good job. So, and I didn't have like super high income, but like, decently good income. And from the day one, I started saving. And I wasn't sure what the saving was for, but that was like the first time I had a full-time job and I have a, decent steady income coming in every month. So I was saving on the side. And, back then a lot of women, I don't know if they do that still in 21st century. A lot of young women, after they get a job in Japan, like they start saving because when they get married, they need money. That's like, it's like a marriage fund. And, I wasn't that traditional, so I wasn't thinking it that way, but like it's pretty natural for people to save money on the side. So I was doing that. And when I quit, I came to New York and I started art school because I never studied art before. And what that means is, as an international student, studying in US government won't allow you to work while you're in school. And also, unlike Americans who can take loans, we can't. And in order for us to get a visa, move to US, to start school, we have to prove that we have enough money in our bank account to support for 4 years of our studies. So those two things became, like a pretty high bar. But I'm talking about like, it was still in the 90s. Tuition for art school was high, but not as high as it is now. And because I worked in a pretty good job for 11 years and I was constantly saving, I had like barely, like almost exact amount I need to not work and just concentrate on studies for 4 years. And I was like extremely poor. Like I think my grocery allowance for a week was $20 to $30. So I have to be very crafty and buy cheap things and cook. Like Sunday was like a cooking day, and I cook all my lunch and dinner for a whole week and put in the freezer and take them to school so I don't have to spend money outside. So that's how I lived, and there was enough money for 4 years. Of course, there is always, like the money is losing a full-time job. The first thing we think about is like money. Like, what do I do with money? But then again, especially in US, people quit jobs and get new jobs all the time. And it's not that like, you quit and go to art school if you can afford to and if you want to. And then you decide at the end, like, oh, wait, I don't want to be a freelancer. I want to get the full-time job. Like, you can still, it's not like it's the end of the world, You can get a full-time job if you want to later on. So, as scary as it is, if you have enough money to do what you need to do for a certain amount of time, you decide there is always an option to, go back and make money. And so you can use that money to do what you want later on. Does it make sense? It's not like black and white. You can always go back and forth in between, and people don't seem to think about that much.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that the problem that a lot of people have, like you said, with it being black and white, they want or need it to be black and white. They need that next step to be like a definite thing. Like they need to know for sure that what they're about to do is about to be a success before they leave their other job that they kind of hate. But I think there is another way to do it, and it's, to not necessarily if you don't want a career in it, but if you want to do it kind of in your spare time. How would you encourage somebody to kind of start to transition into doing art or doing something creative if they do have a full-time job that they don't necessarily hate, or that they just kind of want to incorporate creativity into their lives?
I think that's great. I mean, it's not black and white, right? Like, you don't need to be doing this full time. If you want to be doing this full time, yeah, that's great. But then, there is always a transition period that you're not doing this full time. And then in that transition period, you can always go back and forth. I have a friend who started out as an illustrator around the same time I did. So it was 2003-ish. And he's much younger because he went to art school, straight out of high school. And then, of course, he wanted to do it full time, but things are not that smooth. There's not many people who can be a full-time freelancer right after you graduate. So he got a job, that pays bills. And whenever someone called him for illustration jobs, he did it. And so sometimes he did it after work, oftentimes over the weekend. And then he started getting more jobs. So he started waking up very early in the morning and then worked on that. And it does, sound like a bit stressful. And I'm sure it was a little bit for him. But then the bottom line is art is not something, whether it is an occupation or not, you do it because you want to do it. That's the first thing. And it should be something fun, and it should be something you want to do. It shouldn't be something people force you to do. Your passion comes first. Mm-hmm. So while he was doing all these, waking up early, working till late, working late at night, and then, spending all his weekend doing art, as hard as it is, it was his passion, so he didn't mind. And then he said, so why did he become a freelancer? And he said, at one point, a project came, and it was very exciting. He really wanted to do it. And then he realized he used all his sick days and vacation days, and he can't take any more days off, and he won't finish it even if he stayed up late at night and waking up early in the morning. And so he had to make a decision. It was for him, decision of should I turn this down and go to work, or should I call them and call my job quit? And in his case, there was a deciding point, should I keep it a hobby, or do I want to go freelance? And that point, he felt he can do this freelance, and he really, really wanted to focus on art. So he quit and made a transition. So I'm sorry, I might not be answering your question, but art is something it should come as something you want to do. Sometimes it has audience, sometimes it doesn't have audience. If you don't, he worked for clients, so he had an audience. But in my case, while I had full-time job, I didn't draw much, but I did draw sometimes. But it's on the weekend, And when I felt like it, and I didn't show them to anyone, so, but it made me happy by doing it. That's totally okay too. I don't know, like maybe I'm not answering your question well.
No, you answered it absolutely perfectly, because I think that there are two different methods of doing it. It's either kind of, in poker we call it going all in, which I'm sure you've heard the term. It's just like, putting just all your eggs in one basket and just going forward full force. And then there's, the doing it for the love of it. So you did it for the love of it, and you say you didn't show it to anybody. When did you show your stuff?
In my case, I think like because like it has been the main passion since I was a little kid. And then I picked a path of doing full-time regular job for a while, and it was kind of hitting the wall. It was not going anywhere. And I was like turning 30-ish, and that's when you stop and think, right? And then I felt like, what do I want to do? Like 30 is when you feel like, I mean, it's still young, but like you're not a kid anymore. You're adult, and you kind of start like looking at your friends who are getting married and have kids and buy a house and all that. And especially working for corporate, you kind of start to see the path of future in front of you. And I have to stop and think there is a veil ahead of me of a path that normal path people will take. And do I want to keep running on these rails? And I wanted to try out my passion, and before it gets too late. So, and one problem I had when because I didn't go to art school, I always felt extremely inferior to those who did. And whenever I go to parties or meet friends of a friend, and then that person says, "Oh, I went to art school," and I get freaked out, and I didn't want to talk to this person anymore because I felt like this person did something I wanted to do and I never had a chance to do. And because of that, I felt very insecure and inferior. And I don't think, like art school is great. And I'm glad I did it. But I don't think art school is for everyone. And there are plenty of my friends who are working professionally or like as a hobbyist doing great artwork and never went to art school. So art school is not a necessity. But in my case, because my severe insecurity came from the fact that I didn't go to art school, I needed to go to art school. And unless I do that, I will feel inferior to those who did for the rest of my life. So when I turned 30-ish, like I started like reviewing like, okay, before I get old, what do I want to do? I want to kill this insecurity that I have. And the only way I can do it is to go to art school. So that's one of the main reasons why I decided to move here and go to art school. And of course I wanted to be an illustrator, but like that's kind of like 4 years far in future, and I couldn't really think. Like I wanted to stay in US, I wanted to work in art, but so when I was really poor and back in school, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night because I get freaked out. Like, I left my very steady full-time job to be a ultra poor art student. And what the hell I am doing?
What are you doing, Yuko?
I know, but then like, like whenever I get freaked out and like wake up in the middle of the night, I told myself like, hey, but at least I really wanted to do this and I'm doing it now. So it's okay. So yeah, that's kind of what I told myself whenever, things hit the bottom. So I think like whether you do it like full time or not, Or like, people think like, okay, you got successful, like, when did your worry go away? And the worry never goes away. As long as you're a freelancer, it's like learning to cope with your fear and insecurity all the time. And I think it's okay. But I've been doing this for like, I don't know how many years, like 14 years or so. And I cope with it better. I obviously don't wake up in the middle of the night and think, what the hell I am doing? But it's the extent of that. Because sometimes as a freelancer, you get a lot of work and you're really busy. Sometimes nobody calls you for some weeks and you have plenty of time. And once you have like 2 weeks off, you start to get really worried. And you feel like it's the end of your career. And I feel that way, certainly. Then I was talking to someone like extremely, extremely established, the person I look up to, and he said exactly the same thing. So, like that's like, as a freelancer, I get a lot of freedom. Then also you have to learn to live with this like sort of unstable. It's not that my life is not unstable, but like, insecurity. You really have to live with that.
Yeah, so many good points in there. And I agree that, I think that the fear and insecurity is like kind of a good thing, and it can help to drive you. And if you kind of don't have that, you don't have that like nervous energy and excitement about, what you're doing. You say you live with it, but how do you kind of live with it and kind of embrace it?
So like, if say like nobody calls me for like 2 weeks and I get 2 weeks off and I feel like, oh no, nobody will ever call me again. Like that moment comes, not just to me, but to everyone pretty much. And then the worst thing you can do is sit and freak out. And so, okay, so like 2 weeks off, what do I do? Like, oh, I haven't promoted my work to my potential clients in a while. I can do that. I can update my website because I seldom have time to update my website. So my website is like a year and a half behind pretty much. And so be proactive, like at this point in my career, there are a few people I can call like, hey, I have time. Like, last time I turned your job down, but, I'm available. So call me. And there are few people I can say that and I don't feel embarrassed. So, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but, you can't sit around and freak out. So be proactive in whatever you do is important, I think.
And that's it for part 1 of my interview with Yuko Shimizu. Be proactive. Be proactive in what you do. And also this idea of it not being black and white. That's really important to remember. Yuko had such a very huge transition going from Japan to the United States, and also from, leaving a job of over a decade to go to school. That's such a huge move, and one that blows my mind, and I have so much respect for her because to see her art and to see how successful she is and how motivated she is and how wonderful her artwork is, it's a truly motivational and inspiring thing to see. But chances are your situation might not be so drastic. Your situation might not be such a big change that you have to make in your life. What we're talking about is not making this huge dive into something different. It's incorporating something different into your life in little bits and pieces. It's just incorporating it into your life as it is now and not worrying about that big leap that you might have to take in order to change your career. Perhaps that's something that you might do eventually, but don't look at it as black and white. Look at it as this like gray area where you want to make your life less black or less white, whichever side you're on. Not just doing the daily grind of your job, but incorporating a little bit of color into it, so to speak. So we really get into that a little bit more in part 2 of the episode, and I hope that you'll tune in tomorrow. So make sure you hit that subscribe button in order to get our conclusion with Yuko, and I promise that you will love it as much as you loved this first half. I'd just like to take a second to give a couple shout-outs for ratings and reviews on iTunes because they have been pouring in and I appreciate it so much. It is the reason that we are number 1 in visual arts on iTunes New and Noteworthy, which is helping tons more people see this show. So please keep them coming in. I appreciate it so much. Tanel Japanin, who goes by TJ, says, give it a shot. Just listen to the first episodes and hoping to listen to some more. Youngman's goal is to push the listeners to take action by walking the walk himself. Good stuff. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Trying to walk the walk. Gretchen Schultek says, push through. The best is yet to come. Every artist faces obstacles, but the good ones push through. Tune in to hear how to do just that in your own creative life. Gretchen, thank you so much for that review. The two of you are now entered into the contest at yourcreativepush.com/contest. All you have to do is leave a rating and review for the show here in our launch period, and you are entered to win $100. And we also have 2 other prizes, $50 and $25. So pretty easy, pretty good chances to actually get some money here. I appreciate all those ratings and reviews, and be sure to tune in tomorrow for our conclusion with Yuko Shimizu. Thanks a lot and have a great day. Get some work done.